Hi, welcome to the Golden Age Report. Today we're going to start our show by looking at the Mad Max Dystopia that's forming in Ukraine. Then we're going to look at the heavy bombardment day by Russia. And then we're going to look at the naval power update. And we're going to look at who Putin is getting ready for combat. And then finally, we're going to look at this attack on the U.S. military outposts by Turkey. Russia's recent missile strikes completely took down the rail system. It disrupted the transfer of Ukrainian reserves, and it seems that all of a sudden, Russia has the advantage on all fronts. Russia denies that they had anything to do with the strikes inside Kiev. They claim that the damage in the city was caused by misfire of U.S. missile systems. This seems hard to believe, even though it is coming from the Ministry of Defense. Maybe they're just taking full advantage of the lack of trust people have in Zelensky. Perhaps with all the missile varieties and varieties of drones coming in with inexperienced operators trying to quickly figure out what to do with all these mismatched, patched together air defense systems, maybe it's possible, but it still seems like a stretch. The New York Times released information on the findings of a journalist. They were investigating one of Zelensky's Russia missile strike. They found pieces of U.S.-made air defense missiles on what was claimed to be a Russian civilian target strike. Yes, Zelensky's narrative continues to crumble. Apparently, his wife is out there selling that citizens will just have to hunker down, not only for this winter, but the following ones as well. On a completely other front, I'm finding that there's a huge rally behind this Mad Max dystopian world spreading across Ukraine. It's a world where you start off your morning by siphoning gas, then jumping in a dune buggy, and hunting down Russians as an everyday routine. It's being hailed and celebrated as the future of Ukraine. Apparently, there's a worldwide effort to recruit mercenaries and keep this weakening of Russian underway indefinitely. We haven't seen the marketing materials, but we imagine they might have some unarmed, starving Russians seeking hiding spots in the bushes, while a group of bandits riding in dune buggies and motorcycles hunts them down and picks them off one by one. Won't they be surprised when they arrive on the front lines and are under heavy artillery bombardment while the Azov guards their rear? On this channel, we like to imagine a much brighter future for Ukraine and their people. But apparently there's a large group out there that aspires for a dark age alternate reality. Apparently after a couple of days down, Ukraine has been able to resurrect the down power grid. 70% is back online with some sparks flying. It seemed that Zelensky still had one last day for negotiations of peace. Unfortunately, our Green Grinch started off the final talks by requiring that all territory be returned to Ukraine, including Crimea. It seems that his inner circle is set on continuing to have access to the shelling of the Russian population. There is still no electricity, water, or heating in many regions. The port city situation, so far as water, electric, and heat, remain very difficult as well. In Kiev, half the residents have electricity and only 1/3 have heating. Water supply in the city has been fully restored, but in many areas there's still no mobile connections. On another topic, is Ukraine getting ready to invade Belgorod, Russia? Both sides are amassing troops on the border. The fake stream news is sure trying to get out in front of this to tell us that Russia is going to plan to fabricate a story that they are being invaded. This telegraphing by the news is more concerning than the buildup itself, as they love to use this technique to prime their followers. Well, we'll see if they launch that Mad Max style invasion. Russia really hasn't shown they have an answer to that tactic yet. We did possibly see a counter coming down the rail line in mass quantities a while back. We just haven't seen that on the battlefield yet. This is what's being reported from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Army aviation, missile troops, and artillery have neutralized 2 command posts of a tank brigade and of an assault brigade of Ukraine. Attacks on units and firing positions, manpower, and military equipment in 152 areas have been neutralized. They also took out 3 pieces of U.S.-made radar equipment. Russia's also got the Su-25's attack aircraft out again and striking AFU positions. We heard these rumors of aerial bombing of Kherson 17 times. Only one source is reporting that so far, so we'll just have to see on that one. However, there's been lots of reports of heavy artillery exchange in Kherson though. Ukraine is remembering now that Russia has a 10-to-1 advantage in that area. Also, we kind of warned Ukraine not to push forward from Zaporozhye into Crimea. It's being reported that Russia launched massive strikes on Ukrainian concentrations in that region since our last update. More progress by Wagner and Chechen forces moving towards surrounding Bakhmut. Speaking of Bakhmut, Wagner is back for a second round of recruitment at the prisons. Here's our Western sources map. As you can see, we have a couple of HIMARS strikes. These are thought to take out a couple of warehouses with ammunitions. However, you can see the heavy artillery strikes all up and down Kherson. Here's a quick look at the rest of the regions on the front lines. As you can see, there's artillery strikes all up and down the front lines by the Russians, and even a couple of missile strikes in the Kharkiv region. While the EU is busy squabbling amongst each other over the details of some failed gas cap plan, Putin is systematically making the right moves at the right time. Let's talk about this CSTO meeting that happened the other day. Sounds like our mainstream news friends want to focus on some gossip about some unhappiness from one of its members that was raised up to Putin at the start of the meeting. We're going to focus here on some stuff that came out of the meeting that seems a bit more relevant to the war situation. Putin said he wanted to start heavily arming all of his allies on this list, including Belarus. The other thing that Belarus stated coming out of this meeting was that it was determined at the meeting that Ukraine would end up in total ruins by the end of this conflict if they didn't negotiate peace. This makes total sense, as Russia has been using the tactic of shelling cities instead of doing a lot of street fighting for the most part. They've been trying to conserve lives of the Russians. General Armageddon, whom the West has characterized as barbaric, refuses to engage in this guerrilla warfare, Mad Max style battles. On the surface, this group, looking at their world power rankings, seems like it wouldn't be much of a factor. So we have a world power rank of 64, 90, 98, 111, and then Algeria is at 31, which is relatively high. But if we look at the details and consider that Russia is going to arm them further, well, that tells us a bit of a different story. We have included the military rankings of some of the categories that have really played a factor in the war so far. We've also included Algeria, although they weren't part of this group. They are, however, involved in current joint military exercises with Russia. We thought we would put Germany up there too, just so you have some idea of why they've recently raised some concern about their own readiness for the war, just for comparison purposes. So let's take a look here. We have Kazakhstan. They are ranked 15th in rocket projectors, 22nd in artillery, and 13th with their attack planes. Then we have Armenia, who is 30th in attack planes and 20th in attack helicopters. And then Algeria is looking pretty strong with the 14th rank in tanks, 17th in rocket projectors, 16th in armored vehicles, 15th in artillery, and then 13th in attack helicopters. And then we have Germany over here, who's ranked 52nd in tanks, 55th in rocket projectors, and 32nd in artillery. And they've given Ukraine quite a few tanks already. So we got tired of hearing from the mainstream guys about how bad this attack was, where Russia lost their Moscow. We decided to look at it in a closer detail to get a handle on how devastating this really was to their navy. So they lost one ship to their core fleet, but they still have 185. We also noted that they commissioned this Belgorod sub recently. This is the one that the West has been spending countless resources trying to track its whereabouts. This gigantic monster has often been referred to as a weapons delivery system. Most of its capabilities are top secret, but what we have been shared is that it's armed with 6 Poseidon fully autonomous torpedoes that can cause a mega tsunami. Putin has reminded this feature to the UK at least one time. It also has the West concerned that it could cut the cables on the internet that connects the East and the West. If we look at the numbers compared to the Ukraine alliance, it doesn't look like there is a change in the rankings at all. Japan, who is next in line, ranked 5, only has 71 ships in their core fleet. I'm going to guess that the Belgorod might have actually improved their situation. I'm going to suggest that it was fake news about their navy being in jeopardy. Now let's take a look at the top naval powers, how they stack up at a very high level. It seems that the West has a bit of an advantage here, with 1 superpower and 4 regional powers, while the East only has 1 superpower, 1 world power, and 1 regional power. Now, if Indonesia and Turkey should go the way we think that they might, well, now it seems like the East might have a slight edge. Now let's take a look at what Ukraine is doing to improve their navy. While Ukraine is going Mad Max on land, they're going Waterworld at sea. What they're doing here is they're constructing their own water drones, and it's being said that they're strapping Elon Musk Starlink dishes on these guys and sending them out to try to take out Russia's fleet. This is said to be what was used on that attack on Russia's fleet recently that failed. Now let's take a look at some alarming information coming from Turkey. Apparently the Turkish Air Force is utilizing their US-made F-16s. First we had the Russian pipelines believed to be taken out by the British. Then we had Russia taking out all electric generation and gas in Ukraine. Now it sounds like this assault has spread to Iraq and Syria. This is on the region that the U.S. controlled, the oil-producing region in Syria, where they end up sending it up to Iraq and is finally exported. Turkish airstrikes on oil and gas facilities are now happening on what appears to be a relatively large scale by Turkish drones and their air force. Turkey says it wants to create a buffer zone between them and Syria, as they've had concerns about terror attacks, even before this latest one. I'm guessing, though, there's a lot more to this than that. The breaking news on this is that Turkey just rocket attacked a U.S. military outpost. Well, I think that's going to be our show for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and pound that like button. There's going to be a lot more coming. We're just getting started.